So I never really made a video about Cuphead on my channel before. Maybe I used the music from Cuphead in some of my videos, but I never actually made a video about the game itself. If you don't know, Cuphead is a 2017 run-and-gun shooter game that was made by Studio MDHR. The directors of the game, Chad and Jared Moldenhauer, took inspiration from various cartoons of the 30s. Because of that, the style of the game looks very cartoony. The story is about two brothers, Cuphead and Mugman, who lose in a casino game with the devil. They now have to get all of the soul contracts from devil's debtors to save their lives. The Moldenhauer brothers really had put in their hearts into making Cuphead, since the game has a lot of great features, such as the animation, music, and of course the level of difficulty. Since the Cuphead DLC will be released soon, I decided to revisit the original game and all of the bosses. In this video I will be ranking all of the bosses from easiest to hardest. All of the bosses will be ranked on the regular difficulty, and I'm not gonna add run and gun levels. With that taken out of the way, let's start ranking the bosses. The easiest boss in the entire game is obviously Ruzufanuz. Now some people may disagree and put Botanic Panic as the easiest, but I personally disagree with that. Ruzufanuz is just a very simple boss with a small amount of attacks. In the first phase, Goofy bounces up and down where he can just easily dash when he's in the air. In the second phase, he gets bigger and does exactly the same thing. In the last phase, he turns into a grave and quickly moves from left to right while trying to smash you at some moments. I personally think that even the last phase is easy, since you can just easily dash through him while he's trying to smash you. Botanic Panic is also a really easy boss fight. In the first phase, you're fighting against a huge potato who is throwing dirt at you. Just jump through the dirt and try parrying the worm that comes at the end of each attack. In the second phase, you're fighting against a giant onion. He's going to cry during the whole phase, but his tears are easily avoidable by running to the left and right. The last phase with the giant carrot is kinda tricky at first, but it gets very easy after practice. Just try to shoot the little carrots that he throws at you, and don't stand in one place while he's aiming the laser from his third eye. Threaten and Zeppelin is in my opinion the easiest airplane level. Despite many people thinking that this level is hard, the fight against Hildeberg was actually alright in my opinion. In the first phase, she will laugh at you, causing the word hot to fly towards your side. There are also some little zeppelins who will try to shoot little bullets at you. This phase is really easy, since both of the obstacles aren't that hard to avoid. In the second phase, Hilda will turn to a giant bull made out of clouds, who will at some moments point her head towards the end of the left part of the screen. My advice is to pay attention at the moment when Hilda stops moving for like a few seconds, because she's gonna move her head into the direction where she is standing. The third phase is pretty much the same as the first one. The only thing that is going to change is that there will be a little green zeppelin that will shoot more bullets, and also Hilda might form a small hurricane that can be easily avoided by either going on the lower or higher part of the screen. I also forgot to say that these little zeppelins will appear at all of the phases except the last one. In the fourth phase, Hilda will either form two Gemini or a Sagittarius. The Gemini are way easier since they will form a humanoid siren who will shoot from left to right in a circle direction. The Sagittarius is kinda hard and annoying at first, but with some practice his arrow attack gets easier. The fifth phase is very similar to the first and third. The airplanes and hurricane will form a little faster, but other than that it's mostly the same. The last phase is probably the hardest. Hilda will turn into a giant moon and sometimes point her face a little near to the player. There are also some little stars that you have to avoid, and also two types of spaceships in the sky. The red spaceship will start the abduction a bit late, so you have time to move quickly. The brown spaceship will start the abduction quickly, so you have to wait until it stops and only then move. My advice is staying close to the back of the screen and using the super as much as possible. It can be tricky at times, but with some practice the fight will be over. Surprisingly, Anning Belial's 3 bosses early on the list. Now this boss is what I call creative and simple at the same time. Romantic Fanatic is mostly about jumping and dashing, so the fight should be easy in my opinion. The first phase is about Sally's wedding being interrupted by Cuphead. The first phase is fine, she will throw a fan at the player and send a flying kiss. There are also some parts when Sally's umbrella swallows her and later lets her fall from above the stage. The second phase is happening after they get married and have babies. The baby will appear at one of the house windows and throw bottles of milk. Sally will also form clockwork mice from her umbrella. Both of these attacks are pretty easy to avoid, but I personally consider this phase the hardest, only because it feels the longest. The third phase takes place after Sally dies. This one is very easy, since they literally show which attack is about to happen. She will either throw a lightning, meteor, or a big wave. Lightning can be avoided by just running into different sides. When a meteor appears, make sure to shoot it but don't parry the pink star. When the big wave appears, parry the star when a guy carrying the big wave gets closer. I would use the super on this phase so it would end faster. The last phase is very simple, just run into different sides and dash through the spinning umbrella on the floor. There also will be some audience roses that can be easily dodged. My friend Cagney takes the 15th place. This is the point when the bosses start to get a little harder. Cagney took some time to beat when I just started playing, although now I don't consider him being hard. The first three phases are pretty similar to each other, so I like to call them the first phase. In the first phase, Cagney will point his face towards the player, so you either have to stay on the upper platform or on the ground. At first it may seem hard, but then it gets easier to remember where to go. He will form seeds with little umbrellas that will later turn into evil plant creatures. Try to parry the pink seed, since it's the hardest to dodge from after it turns into an evil plant creature. Then he will spawn a few acorns and a boomerang seed. Both can be tricky to avoid, especially when combined, but after some practice it gets a bit easier. He will continue using these attacks until turning into his last phase. The last phase can be kinda hard at times, so I would use the super. Cagney will leave his hands underground and block some of the platforms. He is also going to throw some sort of seeds out of his mouth, which aren't very hard to avoid. The only advice I can give is to use the super and not panic. Tom and Jerry are in 14th place. For real though, I love the reference to Tom and Jerry. This fight is mostly easy, although there were some parts that took way too much time than they should have. The first phase is fine, although it can be tricky at some moments. Jerry will shoot 5 projectiles at the player that you can dodge or parry. He also has an attack where he can shoot multiple red bombs. When they hit the red floor, they turn into projectiles that run in opposite directions. My advice is to stay attentive and jump a lot of times. Jerry also can shoot 2 platforms, which can be parried when he runs into your side. The second phase is probably the hardest since it is the trickiest one. Jerry will sit inside the tank that can aim fire from left and right. When you see a little bit of fire released from his tank, immediately jump on the upper platform or stay on the floor, depending on where the tank is placed. There are also some bottle caps attached on the left and right side and one vertical row. They will move forward during the phase, so either go up or stay on the ground when they will start moving. It can be annoying during some moments, but it shouldn't be very hard. In the third phase, Tom literally eats Jerry and joins the fight. When he moves his claw on one of the sides, you should run to the opposite side to avoid it. After that attack, 6 pieces of wood will fall from the sky. Their direction is dependent on the side Tom moved his claw to. He will also open his mouth, after what the 2 ghost mice will stand near Tom. They are going to throw pink balls, which can be parried but also split on the floor. I would use the super so that the fight would finish faster. Here we go, my favorite boss from the whole game. Railroad Wrath is mostly simple but can be frustrating and annoying. That happened to me because of using weak weapons. Anyway, the first phase is about an eyeless ghost throwing 2 eyes from his hands. This phase is pretty easy, you just have to shoot the eyes and keep an eye on the pumpkin that throws some pink soap. Also just forgot to mention that you will be standing on a cart with 2 variable switches during the whole fight. So don't let the pumpkin throw a soap on one of the switches. The second phase is also pretty simple but can get really annoying at times. A skeleton will move his head from one side of the train and his hands from the other 2 sides. Try to move the cart on the side with his head, but if you won't be able to do that, try to stay between his 2 hands. The third phase is a bit easier but can still be really annoying. Try to stay in the middle so that you could tell on which side one of the Lollipop brothers will aim fire. Just look out for little ghosts who can shoot pink skulls after dying. The last phase is the hardest, but it is also the shortest one. When the train's tail is visible, try quickly parrying it and then dodging his other attacks. I would dodge fire by running to different sides and the bone wheel by jumping over it. If you use the super, the phase will end really quickly. Many people claim that Beppy the Clown is one of the hardest bosses. Even though this fight can be quite annoying at times, I actually found him as the easiest boss in Inkwell Isle 2. Maybe it's because this was the first boss I beat in Inkwell Isle 2, but still, let's talk about the fight itself. This is the point when bosses start getting kinda hard. The first phase with the bumper car is fine, all you have to do is jump and then dash as soon as Beppy gets closer with his car. Also you need to pay attention to the cardboard ducks, since they can give you damage while jumping. The second phase is when this fight starts to get a little more frustrating, since Beppy starts spawning balloons in dog shapes that can damage you if you forget to shoot or dodge them. There's also a roller coaster that you have to dodge during the second and third phase, and kinda during the last phase, but we'll get to that soon. You can only jump on the seats that have no passengers on them. Also try to jump carefully, since those annoying dogs may spawn at any moment. The third phase is definitely the most annoying and frustrating one. Beppy will ride a carousel horse during the phase. If it's yellow, it will throw horseshoes in a horizontal line. If it's green, it will throw 2 horseshoes in a wavy pattern. This phase is very frustrating because of the roller coaster that may arrive at the worst moment, so you just have to be very patient on this one. The last phase is the hardest in my opinion. Beppy will turn into a carousel with many platforms that you have to jump on. The moment you have to jump on them is when the roller coaster is in extreme speed and a small amount of seats with no passengers will arrive. Beppy will also form penguins from his mouth that are going to shoot baseball projectiles at the player. It is hard but can get easier with a lot of practice. Overall, this fight is kinda hard, but Beppy is definitely the easiest in Fallout 2 boss for me. I took some time to think if I should put this fight lower than Beppy, but then decided that Baroness is a little harder. The main thing that matters here is the weapon that you are choosing for this fight. I literally spent so much time on the first 3 phases because of bad weapons. The first 3 phases are mostly about the mini-bosses that Baroness will spawn randomly. There are 5 mini-bosses and you can only get 3. The Jawbreaker is the easiest mini-boss since you can easily dash about him. Candy Corn is the hardest since it will move randomly. The Baffle is also tricky but gets easier once you dash into different sides correctly. The Cupcake can be kinda tricky but it isn't too hard to dash from. Lastly, the Gumball Machine is really easy with a good weapon. The first phase is just about fighting the mini boss that you get. The second one is the same but it has a little candy with a sword entering from the gate. The third phase is similar to the last 2 but Baroness will shoot 4 colorful clouds that can be easily dodged. The last phase is the hardest, so I would use the super on this one. She will force her castle to chase the player, so you can only stay on the left half of the screen. Baroness will throw her head, which the player has to dodge, and also a peppermint will roll out of the castle that the player has to parry. This one can be stressful, but if you don't panic and have a good weapon, this boss won't be too hard. Captain Brinybeard opens the top 10. Now I don't find this fight as hard as annoying, since there were a lot of annoying moments in this fight. Like with Floral Fury, I like calling the first 3 phases of this boss fight as one single phase, since they don't really differ a lot. In the first phase, Captain Brinybeard will pull out a pink octopus that will send projectiles. All except one can be parried. There's also going to be an annoying barrel on the top of the screen that might follow you at any moment. In the second phase, Captain Brinybeard will start summoning sea creatures. The first one will bring multiple sea dogs after a periscope appears near the ship. They can be either killed or dodged. The second one is about the squid who will fling ink at the player. The ink won't take your health but can darken the screen. The third one is about the shark who will jump from left side after swimming in the background. In the third phase, the exact same thing will happen, but this time the boat will shoot 1 cannonball from its mouth at a time. The most annoying thing is that it's nearly impossible for me to dodge 3 attacks at once, those being the barrel, cannonball, and some random sea creature or Brinybeard's octopus. Anyway, the boat throws out Captain Brinybeard at the last phase and turns into a narwhal. The boat also has some sort of an uvula that shoots flaming bubbles. They can be avoided by dashing at the right time. The boat also has a second attack where it closes the mouth and then opens it again for the uvula to fire a huge pink laser. The easiest way to dodge that laser is just to crouch. The only advice is just to stay away from the barrel so that it couldn't damage you. You might be surprised that just the second airplane level is already in 9th place, but it's simply because many airplane levels are very hard. Wally Warbles was hard at first, but I think that he is still easier than the other airplane bosses. The first phase isn't too hard, but you have to react quickly in this one. Wally will cough up an egg that will fly horizontally and then explode into 3 pieces. His head will turn into a glove and shoot 3 bullets that aren't too hard to dodge. There are also 4 birds on the screen, with the 4th one being parryable for almost the whole fight. In the second phase, Wally will spread his feathers all over the screen. The biggest advice is to move up and down from the feathers until the phase ends. The third phase is definitely the hardest and also the most annoying one in my opinion because of feeling too long. I would suggest using the super on the third phase. Try keeping away from Wally's son and the spiky eggs around him. This phase will take some time, but after practice it should get easier. The last phase shows Wally lying on a stretcher while being carried by 2 paramedic birds. Because of Wally's position, I recommend switching the weapon. The birds and Wally will shoot some random stuff that can be parried. This phase can be tricky, but it's not that hard in my opinion. This is when the bosses start to get really hard, since all of the bosses left are very hard in my opinion. Rebe and Crocs take 8th place overall, and the first place is the hardest in Fallout 1 boss. I seriously spent a huge amount of time on beating these two. The first phase is fine. Croaks will shoot fireflies that can be easily killed. Rebia will fire boxing gloves that go in the same pattern, so this one wasn't a huge problem once I learned the pattern. Right before the second phase, you usually have to jump and dash when Rebia rolls in your side. The second phase is harder than the first one, but it's still fine. Croaks will turn into a giant fan that will make you go back, while Rebia will create an energy ball that is going to jump forward. I would recommend staying on the left side, so it's going to be easier to see in which direction Ruby's energy ball will jump. It can be tricky but gets easy with some practice. Before the last phase, jump and dash when Ruby rolls into Croaks to combine into a slot machine. The slot machine is the section that I really hate, since it's mostly based on luck. I literally hate tigers and got them like 3 times in a row, which caused me to die when I was about to win. The easiest is the snake, since you are just jumping on platforms. The bulls can be tricky at sometimes because of needing to react quickly during the moments with the flame. The tigers is obviously my least favorite one, since it requires jumping through the platforms with balls that appear in the middle. I would just suggest using a super and getting tigers only once if you have all of your health points saved. Overall, this is a hard boss, but it's going to get even harder from this point. Surprisingly, I don't consider Grim Matchstick as the hardest Inquisition 2 boss. There's only one Inquisition 2 boss that I consider harder than this one, but we'll get to that later. The first phase is very tricky, since you have to dodge Grimm's attacks while also platforming on the clouds. Grimm's first attack is about him shooting multiple rings from his eyes, the last of which can be parried. I would suggest parrying the last ring only when you can, since parrying every single pink ring can be hard. Grimm's second attack is about him shooting large fireballs from his mouth, which travel in a wavy pattern. I don't have any advice for the second attack and would just suggest avoiding the fireball by looking at the pattern they move. In the second phase, Grimm moves into the left side of the screen and starts sending marching fireballs that travel across his tongue. This phase is a little easier but can still be tricky. I would suggest staying on your cloud when the fireballs are jumping on the other cloud, and quickly moving to another cloud when they are jumping on your cloud. Also, Grimm shoots out fire or smoke from his nose during some moments, so you should obviously jump on the clouds from the right side. This phase can be really tricky, but it gets easier with practice. The last phase is a complete nightmare, since even the background changes to a thunderstorm. Grimm now has 3 heads, one of which shoots some fireballs. The fireballs can be destroyed, but they will then spread into 4 directions, which can be very difficult to dodge. I would just recommend avoiding shooting them, since they will most likely give damage. The middle head will turn into a flamethrower that is going to fire a stream of flames. The flames will cover the middle of the screen, so just stay at the top to avoid them. This is definitely the hardest and also the longest phase, so I would use the super just when the phase begins. This can be very hard because of also needing to platform the clouds, but with lots of practice it gets a little better. Cala Maria takes 6th place, and oh my god, was it hard to beat this boss. You can only shoot her head throughout the fight, but I didn't know that at first, so don't follow my mistake. The first phase is the longest and can be very hard, but it gets a little easier with practice. Cala has 6 attacks in this one phase. The first is 3 ghost fires, who are inhaled and exhaled by Cala. They move directly at the player, so try moving up and down. Cala will also grab 2 fishes. The yellow fish will shoot an electric eel, so try moving in circles to dodge it. The fish will jump back to the sea, so try staying at the top during that moment. The red fish will try shooting some fire projectiles that can be parried and aren't hard to dodge. Cala will also summon 3 sea creatures, just like Captain Briny Beard. The first are puffer fishes that can be sometimes hard to dodge, but you can just move from left to right and also parry a few. The second is a turtle, which shoots a mine that turns into multiple little projectiles. It can be tricky but isn't hard in my opinion. The last is the seahorse, who doesn't damage you with the water but can make your airplane harder to move. Just try shrinking on that moment to avoid it. The hardest and also the most annoying thing is that she might use 2 attacks together, which can be very hard and annoying to avoid. Practice a lot and the first phase will be a little easier. The second phase is when Cala turns into Medusa. She can turn you into a stone with her gazing attack, which can get really annoying. Just press all of the buttons to unfreeze quickly. Also, the electric eels can come out of water and shoot electric bullets. They are easy to dash from if Cala doesn't turn you into stone. I would suggest using the super here, so the phase could end faster. The last phase is the hardest in my opinion, because of being the most stressful one. Cala's head will move into a narrow cavern corridor. The red spikes on the top and bottom can hurt you, so avoid touching them. Cala's snakes will split out poison bubbles that can deal damage. Cala will also sometimes fire a green ghost, which can turn you into a stone. Just try staying near to the back of the screen to plan all of her attacks. This phase is annoying, but if you use your super and don't panic, the fight will be over. I don't think that many people expected me to put the devil at only 5th place, but the other 4 bosses are even harder. The first phase is a huge challenge and requires a lot of attention while also a quick reaction. The devil will spawn 3 attacks with his spell. The first is 4 bubbles, one of which can be parried. The bubbles are tricky, but you can avoid them by staying in the middle. The second is 5 fireballs. The one in the middle can be parried. This one is hard, so just try dashing through them. The third is 6 wisps of fire, one of which can be parried. They will head to the spot where the player was standing, so I would just jump somewhere at the corner and then back at the middle. The devil will also summon small running purple demons that can be dodged by jumping or just killed by shooting. The devil will also summon into different creatures. The first is Ram, whose attack can be dodged by jumping and dashing when the hands are about to slap the player. The second is sort of a snake or dragon that comes from either the left or right. Just dash to the opposite side of the dragon. The last is a spider, which can be easily dodged by dashing or simply moving away when it falls. After this long phase finishes, the devil will jump with his skeleton down the hole and phase 2 will begin. Phase 2 has 5 platforms. I recommend staying on the left side. There will be 3 obstacles. First is the flaming poker chips that are gonna fall on the platforms. Just jump on the other platform when you see them. The second is an axe that spins around, which isn't hard to dodge. The third is a demonic pink bomb that I suggest to parry immediately. After this, 2 platforms will be removed and phase 3 will start. Phase 3 will have 2 purple demons that can spit out skulls. The skulls can be tricky but aren't very hard to avoid. Blue little demons will fly from the top, which can be easily killed. I will use the super to end the phase faster. The last phase is very stressful but also very short. The devil will start crying tears that can be parried. There's also going to be 1 platform with 1 flaming poker chip. Try jumping before it falls on you and then jumping back on the platform. Keep practicing a lot and eventually you will beat the final boss in the game. If you don't count number 3, this is the hardest on an airplane boss fight. Also, this is an extremely annoying one, but let's talk about the fight. The first phase can be annoying but isn't too hard. The first phase is about Rumor Honeybottoms calling the bee officer. The officer will throw bombs that explode in a few seconds. After exploding, they will send 6 spikes, 3 of which can be parried. There is also a tired worker who can come out of the left and right side. The worker can be easily killed, and I would recommend to stay on the opposite side of the bomb to not take damage. The second phase is about Rumor Honeybottom sending 3 attacks. All 3 are an equal torture. The first is a pink sphere that you can parry. The second attack is a pink pyramid that will shoot bullets from its vertices. Try paying all your attention to the vertices, since it's really hard to avoid the bullets. The third attack has Rumor Honeybottoms dropping her head down to the middle and spitting out beam missiles. I honestly suck at this one, so just pay attention to the direction of the missiles. After these 3 attacks, use the super on the beginning of the last phase. Rumor will turn to an airplane and attack from the bottom of the screen. I don't have an advice for the fist missiles attack and will just jump into different sides to avoid them. The basso attack can be hard, but if you stay in the middle and move to the opposite side, you will be fine. Overall, this boss is very hard and frustrating. It kinda reminds me of Grim Matchstick because of the platforms. The only difference is that they are vertical and more annoying. King Dice was a total torture for me. This isn't even a freaking fight, it's just a collection of mini bosses. I can't really talk about the phases since the whole fight depends on how you roll the freaking dice. And believe me, I had lots of problems with this dice. I literally got to start over like 3 times. There are 9 mini bosses, so I will talk about each one shortly. The first are 3 alcoholic beverages. Kill the little glass first because his attack is the hardest to avoid. The other 2 are pretty easy. The second one is a random stack of poker chips with a cowboy hat. It can be really annoying at times, but is mostly easy to dodge from. The third one is terrible. The only thing that can make this mini boss easy is the invisible dash, but I mostly try to skip this fight. The fourth one isn't too hard if you have good concentration. I would only try to dash rarely on the parts with 20-sided dice. The fifth one is easy if you have an invisible dash. If you don't, you will probably lose some health on the skulls. Also, his other attack where you have only 2 parable shapes is just so annoying for me. The sixth one can be really challenging, but I don't think it's the hardest. Just look out for the ghosts that are riding on horses at the bottom of the screen and dodge the golden horseshoes. You can also parry the pink horseshoe. The 7th is very annoying without an invisible dash. I recommend parrying the upper platforms and dashing through Peruletta for the main attack. The 8th is very easy in my opinion, just shoot the 8 ball and dash through billiard chokes. The 9th one is the hardest in my opinion. You should find a match for the card you open and only then you can start attacking the monkey. This one is mostly about memorization, so good luck with that. After you beat at least 3 mini bosses, you will finally get to fight King Dice. Despite King Dice only having one attack, I always ended up dying. I suffered with the last phase so much that I had to hide behind his hands to actually beat him. This fight is overall very creative, but for me it's also frustrating and annoying because of the dice. From all of the fights, this is one of the 3 that made me extremely frustrated. The fight against the genie is also the one that made me extremely frustrated. I literally spent so many hours trying to beat him for the first time. Like I seriously wanted to put him in the first place, but then changed my mind. So Genie has 5 phases. In the first you either get swords, cat sarcophagi, or jewelry. Jewelry is the verse I always retry when I get it. The swords always fly at the top, left or bottom, so if you learn the pattern and act quickly, it won't be a huge torture. The cat sarcophagi aren't hard, but can be very annoying at times. When you're done with that, you will move to the second phase with the pillars. This one is mostly easy, just shoot the section with the genie's phase and try to shrink when you need to. The third phase is the easiest. You can just switch the weapon and shoot the sarcophagus from the top. It's not even that hard to dodge from the planets and shoot ghosts. The fourth phase is really hard. Genie will create a puppet version of Cuphead. The Cuphead will shoot in a vertical position, while you will also have to dodge from Genie's moving hat that shoots little bullets. This phase is really hard and I always lose health here, so just try your best to dodge the bullets and use the super. The last phase is a torture. Genie will create 3 pyramids that are going to move clockwise or counterclockwise. One of the pyramids will open its eye and fire 4 beams of dark energy. Genie can also fire a transparent ring-shaped projectile. This phase was a torture for me since I couldn't react that quick at the pyramids and always ended up dying because of low health. There's only one boss I consider harder and I think you'll know who I'm talking about. Dr. Cal's freaking robot takes first place. I think this was an obvious decision since this boss made me extremely frustrated. I literally beat the last phase by pure luck. This is how hard it was. The first phase is extremely hard. You have to shoot the robot's chest door, chest hole and antenna. The antenna will form a laser attack that covers a certain part of the screen. The chest door will send little ships that are really hard to avoid in my opinion. The chest hole will send a parable laser mission that you have to parry to save health. After you beat those 3 obstacles, you will get even more obstacles. You can get nuts and bolts after destroying antenna, a metal magnet and his twisted arms that shoot blue energy balls after destroying chest hole, and homing bomb missiles after destroying chest door. Oh my god, this is just the first phase? Then you will have to shoot a heart until the first freaking phase ends. The second phase is the easiest, but it's hard too. The robot's head will fly from top to bottom, while the bomb missiles will try to attack you. I would just suggest shooting the head when it's at the bottom and shooting the bombs when the head is at the top. This one is hard, but it gets easier with practice. The third phase is the biggest torture I have ever seen. I can hardly understand how I managed to beat this boss. Dr. Cal will take 2 diamonds that will turn to a circle of projectiles. Both blue and red projectiles are very hard to avoid. There are also some electric walls in the top and bottom that increase in size to make it even harder. But what was the point if it already was an extremely hard boss? Overall, I think that all of the phases are hard, and this is truly the hardest boss in the whole game. Well, and there you have it, all 19 Cuphead bosses ranked from easiest to hardest. It was definitely fun to revisit the original game, and while some of the bosses are extremely difficult, I can't deny that the majority were still very fun and creative. As I already said, Chad and Jared really have put in their hearts into making this game, and I think it was totally worth it. They managed to create a hard and frustrating, but also create funny and unique game. The Cuphead DLC is probably out by the time I'm editing this video, so if you want I might play and make a video about it. Also, the game footage was taken by several YouTube channels, so I will leave the links in the description. With that said, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Please subscribe and share your opinion about the video if you want to. Thanks for watching, goodbye.
That's all there is. There isn't anymore. Or is there?